Right, I've had quite a few questions on how the blowback system works on the Pellet 177 M17. So I've taken it all apart so that you can actually see how it operates. I wouldn't advise you doing this yourself as everything is under spring pressure and it's not the easiest thing to take apart. So what we've got is, I've taken the top slider off and you can see that there's a small area here, which is what the piston here, I'm pointing at now, which loads in there, slides into. So I've laid it out here as it comes apart. So the brass part is screwed into the rear here. I'll just take the, right, so that goes into there. Now, within that area there, I'll take the magazine out. So you can see the magazine is coming up there, which is where the pellet is. So I'll take that out so we can see a little bit better. So that's the area that all of that fits into. So I'll put this to one side and explain what all these parts here. So when we take it apart, we've got a rubber washer, a washer, a spring, the plunger, the brass end cap, and there is a white nylon seal there, and there is a steel band around the brass end, which hopefully you can see. I'll try and zoom in a little bit more. I'll move the camera so you can see what we're doing. I'll just move that down a bit. Right, nearly there so you can see it all. Let's just take that up to there. So that's the major parts that fit into the gas reservoir that fires the pellet. So on the actual gun, this area here that I'm pointing to now, there we go, that's the actual reservoir. So when you load this part up inside, this part here connects to the bottom of this reservoir. There's a small hole in there. So this whole area then becomes pressurized with gas. So that's the reservoir, and that has to push gas in that direction. It also pushes it in that direction to move the slider. So I'll now explain how that works. What you're going to notice is on this silver piece here, there is a cutout in there. You can see where I'm putting that now. And that cutout goes through that area there. That's the transfer port that the air will come out of onto the pellet and push the pellet down the barrel. So I'll just sort of assemble this here in front of you so you can actually see then how it works. So put the spring on. Now this goes on one way only. You'll notice one side is flat and the other side has a slight recesses in it. So the recess goes on so you can see it. And on the brass bit, is slightly undercut that this clips onto quite nicely. It's fiddly, but it will go. Right, that's on there. You'll also notice on this part that there's a sharp edge cut where my fingernail is. And that sits firmly onto the nylon there. So when that's in, you've got your washer and your rubber O-ring. So that, as I'm holding it, sits inside that chamber on the actual gun itself. Yeah, just bring that in so you can see it. Upside down. Hopefully you can see that. Yep. Right, I'm holding it, fits into that chamber. So that is now pressurized. So I'll just move this out of the way. Now the pressure can't escape that way towards this over here because the bevel on the silver plunger is up against the nylon washer, and the pressure can't escape the other way because of the O-ring locking it in position. So how does it actually fire? Well, what happens is when you pull the trigger, small plunger, right, on this one here, right, this one here has a small plunger there. If you can see it, you probably can if you take your cover off. What happens is you pull the trigger, this part here, where are we? There we go. This part here comes back, flicks forward. As it flicks forward, it hits this pin here, which knocks that pin in. And this is where we get onto the interesting bits. That pin then knocks this pin sticking out here. As you can see, if I hold it, if I just push that forward, you can see that as it goes forward, it opens up an area between that V and the white nylon. So what then happens, where can I put this down a little bit, is as this slides forward very, very slightly, I mean, it's 0.01, whatever it is of a millimeter, it's hardly anything. It pushes this hard up against the pellet in the actual magazine itself, so that makes a good tight seal there. And at the same time lets air pass between the V and the white nylon. Now, as soon as that happens, high pressure air can go into that slot and exit out of this end here, which then blows the pellet down the barrel. But because this part here is a sloppy fit, as you can see in there, that not only does it blow air in that direction to propel the pellet, but obviously you get air leakage around where this goes into that brass end. Now, as the air leaks out of there, this part here is contained in there. I'll just load that in so you can see it. And then the pin, the hammer, hits this pin here, and you can see as I'm pushing there, it's moving the silver bit. So that goes down. The air that escapes back round it, past the brass round it, fills this area up here, which then causes, because this part is fixed, the slider to move back. And it's a nice good fit. There we are. So that will slide to that position. When it gets to there, then the air will exit from that point there. But of course, we've already got the inertia of the slider going back, so it will continue on back. So the question I get asked an awful lot is, how do I stop the blowback? And will stopping the blowback give me more shots and more FPSs? But as far as FPSs go, or feet per second, it will give you no increase whatsoever, because by the time the slider has started to move back, the pellet has long gone left the barrel because of the actual mass of the slider part. What I have done now is actually I have clamped the slider with a G-clamp to the actual main gun assembly and shot 5 shots, and then released it and shot 5 shots over a chrono, and there is no difference. So the slider moving back does not increase or decrease the FPSs. So how do you stop the slider moving? A couple of ways. One is obviously to clamp it with a G-clamp, as I did. The other way is to actually stop, where are we, back up here? The other way is to actually stop any gas pressure coming past this and this brass bit, which is really sloppy at the back. The only way to do that I can see is to make up a sleeve to drop in there, which makes that a much nicer fit. To make up a new brass end, that's another possibility. The other route is to somehow do an insert or an undercut to go in there to put a rubber O-ring in there. But of course the O-ring's got to stay in there because as soon as that pops, it's going to blow the O-ring out. So at the moment, I don't have any ideas how to do that. Right, hopefully that explains and answers some of the questions I've been asked. That's about all I can tell you. Thank you very much.